This is George's video here. It's you should own Bitcoin, nothing to do with the price. That's the title of it. The problem that George is not understanding is that I know George loves 7.3s. I love 7.3s. That's my favorite truck, right? It's like a 7.3 Power Stroke diesel. It's Ford trucks. He's got a 97. He said it's a cream buff. He might flip it. He's got a couple in storage. I thought this was interesting. I was like, man, this is really cool to find out that George is into trucks. I'm into trucks. The Ninja, by the way. I mean, I don't know if it's under wraps or whatever, but he drives a 7.3. I mean, the 7.3 Power Stroke it's the ultimate truck. And I have a 5.9 Cummins, so hold off. I got the Cumster, but it's the ultimate truck. And because they're just trucks. That's all they are. They're not the fastest. They're not the shiny. They're just trucks, and they last. And right, there she is, a 7.3. Look, redoing some of the interior for sure. I think this is a super important subject that George is hitting on. Essentially, what he's saying is the way our culture is going here in the Western world. I'm in North America, but this is around everywhere. Is we're moving more to a digital society, and we're moving to these social credit scores. Essentially what he's pointing out is that the trend is authoritarian state. I think long-term that the nation state is actually on its way out. I don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense at this point in time, particularly with the Gen Zers, to where there's really any bridge between what the nation state once was and the reason that it existed and where we're going now at this point in humanity. But George is bringing up an excellent point in that it's going to become likely, the probabilities are there, he would say, that at some point in time, for being a free market or a free thinker or a person who believes in capitalism, maybe doesn't go with the regime's agenda or propaganda, you could be labeled a terrorist. And that is a very real thing. We see that our elites, Nancy Pelosi has increased the Capitol Police budget to an additional $2 billion for this fiscal year. It's quite a bit of money. They're starting a branch here in Florida because, Capitol Police, why not have them in Florida, being that the capital is in Virginia, makes total sense. And so what we're seeing is that as our nation starts to degrade and our leadership is showing how incompetent they actually are, and this is a trend, this isn't just one event, this is a trend that's been continuing on. George brings up the point that it's very possible that they could cancel you from the banking system. And I think that he is right on the money, literally right on the money. I get a YouTube strike, but I think he has a point on the crypto. I think he's completely wrong on the Bitcoin. The problem with Bitcoin is that it's fully trackable and traceable, so there's no fungibility. If you know history, you know that this will happen. Completely fungible, meaning each item or particular part of the coin is the same. Problem with Bitcoin is that you can divide Bitcoin and you can have a piece of a Bitcoin, but if that Bitcoin happened to be owned by, say, Edward Snowden 5 or 10 or 50 transactions ago, let's taint it, right? You could have a situation where the authorities go, oh, wait a second, this is linked to someone like George Gammon, who's a nationally known terrorist because he's a free market thinker. And because you got this particular piece of this Bitcoin, these Satoshis, from somebody who obviously knew George Gammon, we're going to have to confiscate this from you, or it's not going to have the same type of value. Or I'm not a law dude. I really don't even respect the law at this point in time. Having been around crypto for a decade at this point in time, is what we originally thought Bitcoin was, is what Monero actually is. But if you go under investigation for something and a 3-letter agency comes after you, your bank accounts are frozen. Monero just means money. It's fungible, it's transportable, it's divisible, it's recognizable. It has all of the qualities of money as far as a digital fiat currency. This happens already. It's just that people don't understand that it does happen because it's never in the news. Monero is actually more scarce than Bitcoin at the current moment, but a lot of the Bitcoins have been lost because back in 2011, people lost wallets and there's only so many of them. And so the problem is that you end up with this deflationary currency, which is amazing, but it's a stretch too far for a world currency. That's the narrative on YouTube, is him, Mark Moss, Max Kaiser, it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Silver, these are 2 silver coins. I could melt them down and you wouldn't know that this one is a US silver, and you wouldn't know that this one has got the Queen's face on it. right? They're identical. I could change forms. I could turn them into anything I wanted to turn them into. They would still resemble their properties, their physical properties. What they don't understand is, like, when my libertarian roommates and I were messing with Bitcoin in 2011, we could mine it on our computers. And when we bought it, we could buy it from people who also mined it, but maybe had like gaming computers. But now it's a bridge between the fiat financial system, aka your SunTrust bank account or Bank of America or BB&T, whatever you use. It's interesting that BB&T and SunTrust are now merged, because before the banks were too big to fail, but now there's less banks and they're way bigger. Whenever you've had a contraction of the money supply, you've had crazy recessions that go with it. So if Bitcoin were to become world reserve currency, the fixed supply is great, but even something like Dogecoin that has a small inflation rate, 3% a year and falling relative to coin supply, it's a fixed inflation rate. It will also become deflationary in nature. As the economy grows and the money supply doesn't grow as fast as the economy, it'll also become deflationary. People wouldn't invest in projects like the idea that I'm going to go buy a new tractor for $50,000, or I just go buy a Bitcoin. The problem with Bitcoin is it's fully trackable, and that's the thing that like guys like George are like, they're probably too old to know, or they haven't been around crypto long enough to really get it, or they are just reciting the narrative, or they're playing like, well, Bitcoin won't get banned. Because I agree with that. I don't think Bitcoin will get banned. I think Bitcoin's like that one thing where like there's enough influence at this point in time where you can buy your senators and congressmen, and you know it's fully public. There's nothing to not like about it. Like, you know who obtains it. It's in value because it's fixed and scarce. So you can always buy more goods and services. That's an amazing concept if you're not using the Bitcoin for the transaction. If you're loaning against it, great, because as it continues to go up in value, you can loan against it and then use something else to purchase it. But if the currency does always go up in value, and a short squeeze currency, it should, as a store of value, it should do that to buy the Bitcoin, then to buy the tractor. So you end up in this situation where, yeah, the currency appreciates, but it makes no incentive to go out and invest, because the best performing asset you could buy would be the short squeeze currency. So there's not this reinvestment into society. Bitcoin's very slow now. The Bitcoin maxis are like, well, there's Lightning Layer, and there's Tor, and there's all these crazy things. And the truth of it is that a deflationary currency is an amazing idea, but it doesn't work in historical economics. Like Milton Friedman's, they talked about raising the money rate, the supply of currency, rather, with the inflation or the growth of the economy. So basically they said, inflate the currency at the same rate as the growth of the economy. Do that digitally because it's all fake anyway, and it'll stay pace. The only thing that we have in the free market that really truly does that is like gold. Like, it literally does that, and it's maintained that for 5,000 years. If I sell George a 7.3 Power Stroke diesel and he pays me in Bitcoin, and then at some point the rebel capitalist becomes labeled terrorist, because that's obviously probably going to happen, the likelihood is there, and then there's a transaction linking me to George, the value of that Bitcoin is negative to me. It's not worth 50 or 100 or 500,000. No, it's negative. So if I sell George a 7.3 diesel and it's cream puff and he pays a Bitcoin for it, it might actually be negative to me if I accept a Bitcoin from George. He goes on to Coinbase, he trades fiat dollars for Bitcoin, and then I go ahead and trade him a truck for that particular Bitcoin. It's negative because it's a fully public blockchain ledger. That's a lot by design in that currency. But the biggest problem with Bitcoin as a currency or as a value store is the on-ramps and off-ramps to obtain Bitcoin. George is talking about buying it now while you can. And some of you guys have reached out to me and been like, dude, Trav, I'm having a hard time with these exchanges, and I'm getting blocked, or I live in the wrong state. Like, yeah, they're starting to monitor the on-ramps and off-ramps of fiat. Like, back in the day when we got Bitcoin, we would just find someone that's mining it, and we just buy it from them direct. And we go there down to their bank account, put money in their account. Like, there was no exchanges. And so, yeah, it could work like that with Bitcoin at the moment, but you really need an on-ramp and off-ramp. Interesting thing about Monero is it's one, fully private. Bitcoin is not. It's fully public. You can look on the blockchain and see every transaction that's happened. These guys, which are some of the original Bitcoin developers, are working on this coin Monero. And this is a cold wallet, by the way, so you can actually store physical Monero on this. It has an inflation rate every year of 165,000 new coins. And it can be mined on traditional laptops and traditional phones and traditional iPads and things like that. So you can join a mining pool and add your computing power to it and get paid in Monero for your contribution. In Bitcoin, they use ASICs. They're application-specific software or miners. Back in 2011, my roommates were mining it on their laptops, and guys that had gaming computers and things like that would have more coins, and so they would be selling these coins around, and people could buy them. They were like little grassroots exchanges. Then it became an arms race, so now you need a warehouse to mine Bitcoin, and it's really a corporate game at this point in time. If you're not invested in mining it, it's really not really worth it. Back in the day, we thought it was private, and then a friend of ours got nailed, and he got 2 life sentences plus 20 years. For running a website that was heavily involved in Bitcoin. They were doing illegal things. It wasn't correct what they were doing, but it was free market. It was free market capitalism, and he was a billionaire on today's Bitcoin valuation. He was a billionaire. They stole all of that from him. They stole his life from him. They took everything from him. It's debatable how they tracked him, and he was doing stupid things and in message boards, but either way, Bitcoin's fully public. And I want to point out that the big problem with Bitcoin, though it's the short squeeze of the century, no doubt, there's only 21 million of them. It's great, there's a fixed supply, but the problem is that Fiat bridge is no good. You need something that you can mine on your computers like we used to do in 2011. You need a way that you can bridge that gap where you can trade electricity for currency and currency for goods and services and have complete anonymous private currency that's fast. So what George is missing and what he's not understanding is that you need his point on cryptocurrency is, yes, he's 100% spot on cryptocurrency. You should have 10% of your net worth, your portfolio, if you will, in cryptocurrency for the event that you do get canceled from the financial sector, or as a speculation to increase your net worth or whatever. But really for that risk of gold and silver is great, but it's hard to jump on a plane with bags of metals. But it's relatively easy to jump on there with a small hard drive, or memorize your keys and go anywhere in the world and then flip it into the currency, the local currency. But what George is missing, what Mark Moss is missing, what a few of these guys, particularly Robert Kiyosaki, who I feel like if he was younger, he would get it, because he gets it, he preaches it all the time, is privacy. Because my coin example with George, if I buy a coin from George, if I exchange it with him and he's labeled a bad person at some point in the future, and I believe at some point, yeah, they will, major problem for me. It has negative value to me. Or if I flip it fast enough, it becomes a musical chairs. Well, I got rid of it, but now it's negative value for somebody else. My point there being is that the blockchain is too public. So what happens is Bitcoin's not going to become a currency. It's going to become a store of value. Is it a place to save 10% of your net worth and just keep it? Yes. It's better than buying a zero interest or negative interest nominal rate or adjusted for real rate government bond, for sure. I'd much rather have it, but also it's not decentralized currency. It's mined at major factories, places that have huge power draws, places that you need a local jurisdiction to be pro-Bitcoin to allow you to mine that, because they're going to look at your energy bill and they're going to be like, they're either one, growing marijuana, or two, they're doing Bitcoin. And if the bill is big enough, they're doing Bitcoin. And so with Monero, it's mined on individual CPUs, phones, iPads, laptops, tablets, anywhere. And you're going to essentially trade electricity, like Buckminster Fuller said. Trade electricity for currency, trade currency for goods and services. And when it's private, it's non-taxable. And it exists in cyberspace, and your local government authorities can't take it from you. That's the real win right there. That's the real win. With Bitcoin, we know when and where those transactions occur. And so all those events are taxable events, and we can change the rules. Oh, you can't come and take my Bitcoin. I can tax you at 95% like we did in the 30s. Yeah, I can tax you at 95% on Bitcoin transactions, so I can take your Bitcoin. Well, I'm not going to pay it. okay, well, I'm going to know who you are. I'm going to at least have a reasonable clue. I'm going to be able to track you relatively, eventually. The more transactions you have, the more that I'm going to be able to throw AI on you and find you, and I'll just imprison you and give you 2 times life plus 20 years, like my buddy Ross. So that can occur, and it's going to occur. And at that point in time, there'll be a wealth transfer into private digital currencies. And that's the ultimate speculation. I'm not anti-stacking Bitcoin. I think 10% of your net worth could easily be in Bitcoin. It makes total sense. But I think that the real solution here is something that can be always mined. You don't need a fiat bridge to an exchange. You can mine it with your CPUs, essentially turning your electrical power into currency, fully private, and exchanging it for goods and services. That's the solution. Make it difficult to bridge fiat to Bitcoin to whatever. The solution will be have a laptop, have a cell phone, have an iPad, download the Monero blockchain, and start mining the thing yourself and join a mining pool. And so what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to essentially turn your electricity into currency, and it will create this incentive to have the lowest cost electricity. It will actually create an incentive, like myself, where I'm like, how can I get on solar? And I'm doing the math, and I'm like learning about I'm learning about positive and negative neutron. I'm trying to figure out all the math. Do I need an inverter? How big of a battery pack do I need? Doubt that it's going to 500,000 a coin. I own some. I'm not going to sell it, but I'm not building a larger position in it. I'm building a larger position in privacy, because privacy is going to be the battle of the next decade and a half. Guess what?